We're talking about 7 objections to the fine-tuning argument for the existence of God, and I'll tell you what I think of them. To help me, we have some special guests, unicorns, and someone else who will appear later. I'm Sam, and I have a PhD in philosophy from the University of Michigan. I taught college for more than 20 years, and now I want to share my information with you. So, philosophy isn't just a list of things that other people said. Philosophy is something you do. We're going to think about the fine-tuning argument, 7 objections to it, and see if they're any good. The version of the fine-tuning argument we're talking about is the one presented by Bradley Monton in his book, Seeking God in Science, An Atheist Defends Intelligent Design. I have a video on it that explains it. I'll link to right here. So 1 unicorn is a stretch, 2 is some plausibility, 3 is compelling, like something where you really need to engage with it, and 4 is devastating, devastatingly cute. The first objection we're talking about is the claim that the probability of God is 0. If you assign probability 0 to the existence of God, no evidence will ever change your mind. 1 unicorn, a stretch. This isn't a very good objection in my opinion. We should only assign probability 0 to contradictions. Otherwise, it's very close-minded. It means we can't learn from evidence. My example from the history of science that I think about is Alfred Wegener, who was a meteorologist who proposed the theory of continental drift. And Wegener was laughed out of the halls by the geologists who thought this was ridiculous, absurd, because continents are too big to move. Well, it turns out Wegener was right. If those geologists had assigned probability 0 to the claim that continents drift, they would never have become convinced. Some people claim that God is contradictory. The notion of God is a contradiction itself. The Simpsons version of this is, can Jesus microwave a burrito so hot that Jesus can't eat it? Right? The classic example is the paradox of the stone. Can God create a stone that's so heavy that even God can't lift it? One of the issues with the fine-tuning argument we discussed in the last video is that it can't get us to the existence of the God of the Abrahamic religions because it's just an intelligent designer. We don't know anything more about it. But in the light of this objection, that's actually a good thing because if it's not a perfect being, then you can't have a contradiction. Not to pile on to this argument, but I'm going to pile on a little bit. These are subjective probabilities. So it would still be a very important, potentially significant argument for people who didn't assign probability 0 to the existence of God. And there are lots of people who wouldn't characterize themselves as theists, who don't believe that God exists, but still think there's a positive probability that God exists. The next objection is really a suite of objections due to David Hume. David Hume was a Scottish philosopher in the 18th century. And here is how I would characterize Hume's approach to philosophy.
They may take our lives, but they'll never take our compatibilist theory of freedom.
Yeah, I can't do accents, but I thought of that joke, so I totally paid this awesome Scottish dude named Derek to do it for me. This, David Hume wearing the Braveheart face paint, is just about as historically accurate as William Wallace wearing it. Fine-tuning argument is a version of a design argument, and Hume is famous for critiquing the design arguments. He argues that even if there is a designer, we can't infer that they're good or that they're smart or that they're even singular, meaning there's only one, right? Most things that we run into in the world are designed by multiple people and created by multiple people. So if we're really reasoning by analogy, wouldn't the universe be designed by a group? In terms of intelligence, Hume's language was the designer could be a dumb mechanic who lucked into it after many unsuccessful tries. Like a trick shot player, right? Eventually you're gonna get it right and you record that one. Hume too thought that about the designer. We can't infer necessarily that the designer is good because a designer who wanted to annoy people might want to create people to annoy. Another thing Hume said about the design argument is that it was inferring from n equals 1. it's not like we see 1,000 universes get created and then make an inference about this one. We only have the one, and we can't see the creation of it. And so we have a very strong n equals 1 problem, and we shouldn't infer from a single case. So now, Braveheart Meow Meow is now going to rate Hume's objections. And she and I say, 2 unicorns, some plausibility. The fine-tuning argument has some of Hume's objections already baked into it, meaning it's not saying we're concluding that a perfect being exists, just that intelligent designer exists. And so in a way, it's less vulnerable to Hume's points because it gives up some of what Hume was arguing against in the first place, and just talks about the intelligent designer and not the God of the Abrahamic religions. I think it would be very interesting if there were a designer to the universe, if we came to that conclusion, even if that designer might still have flaws. I mean, a powerful being created the universe would definitely get headlines, and it would make many people change their worldviews. And we could have lots of discussions about what that being was then like, but it would still be a big deal if that were established. Currently, scientists do make a lot of inferences from n equals 1, and I think specifically of astrobiology, where we only know of one life-supporting planet, but a lot of inferences are made about that. And I think more sophisticated statistics have evolved. But let's still give respect to Hume, because these are objections to an argument that he'd never heard of, and they're still to be reckoned with. The next objection is God of the gaps. And this objection is something that theists can bring up. It's risky, theologically speaking, to base your faith on current science because science changes. And when science changes, you might lose the argument that you were relying on for your religious belief. It's theologically risky, perhaps. My rating of this is a single unicorn. This one is a stretch because, even if it's theologically risky, that doesn't change any of the probabilistic logic of the argument, right? It might be unwise to rely on for your faith. That doesn't matter. It doesn't object to the argument itself at all. Another issue with this is that the audience for the fine-tuning argument is people who don't already believe in God, and so they won't be motivated by this because this is a religious objection. The next objection, this is by Montan. What are we all talking about if very few of us can evaluate the key premise? Only the astrophysicists or physicists are in a position to do that. This objection gets a single unicorn. This is a stretch. And the reason is that whatever uncertainty we have about what physicists say, we can build it into the model. This is the little cat bar. Let's say that there's disagreement among physicists. 20% disagree. Well, I just raised the bar, right? However much it is, we could characterize that. It will increase the probability that life would exist in a universe that didn't have God. But since a lot of physicists do agree with the fine-tuning evidence, that absent another explanation, that it would still make us raise our probability that God exists, even if we were uncertain about the opinion of physicists, right? The only way it wouldn't is if there was so much disagreement about the fine-tuning evidence that physicists held that a randomly produced universe would be just as likely to support life as theists say that a universe created by God would be to support life. So that's obviously not happening. And so the argument, the mechanics of the argument would still work. Next objection, also by Montan. This one is called weird life. And Montan argues there could be radically different life. His example is a conscious being made of hydrogen. So you could have a universe where there weren't even stars. Somehow there could be a conscious being, and we just can't conceive of bizarre ideas like that because n equals 1, I guess. We know what life looks like to us. And we're not maybe great at imagining other kinds of life. This means basically that the universe doesn't have to be as fine-tuned as all that, because even if it were radically different, there were no stars, you could still have some life. I give this 1 unicorn. Sorry, it's a little repetitive, but I'm just sharing what I think of these. 1 unicorn. And my thought about this is no. I cannot conceive of a conscious being made entirely of hydrogen. But even if that's wrong, just like the last objection, we build this into the fine-tuning model, right? Say that, oh, okay, there's more different kinds of weird life that we didn't think of. Well, that just is going to raise the little cats, but just a little bit, right? Because there's a lot of those universes. If you change the fundamental physical constants a lot, I mean, there's no chance for any kind of organization or something like that. So you're just moving that bar up. But as long as it's shorter than the other one, the mechanics of the argument still work. The measure objection is a technical one in probability theory. So the gravitational constant is 6.7 if we round. But how do you assign concrete probabilities to this constant being different? Again, just like Hume said, this is a version of n equals 1 in a way, that it's not like we've observed 100,000 universes and noticed the distribution of the values of the fundamental physical constants in those universes. We only see the one. And the gravitational constant can be negative and it could be positive. And there doesn't seem to be any limit or bound to how large the value or small the value could be. So how do we assign any specific probability to it? And that's called the measure objection. If you have an infinite space, like the number line, assigning a probability measure over it is very problematic and tricky. So it's a technical question in probability theory. And my rating of this is 1. I think this one is a stretch. It fails because we don't need a precise probability measure to understand extreme unlikelihood. Say God comes to you and offers you a ticket in an infinite lottery. And God says, there's no upper bound to the number of the ticket I could draw. What do you pick? You pick a ticket. Say you pick number 337. Well, unless we think God is being sneaky, your ticket has just as much a probability of winning as any others. But, 1 ticket over infinite tickets is 0, I guess. But it doesn't seem impossible that your ticket would win. It could win. So it's very tricky to understand how exactly to do this. And yet, the measure objection applies in this scenario. But don't we still have the idea that it would be extremely unlikely if the ticket that was drawn was your ticket? I think we can have an understanding of that without having a mathematically precise capturing of that understanding. And certainly if we have all these fundamental physical constants, where if we vary them by even just a little bit in any direction, we get a universe radically inhospitable. We can get the sense that that's super improbable without being able to give a specific numerical value. And, a lot of the times when we update with on the Bayesian model, it's not like we have calculators in our head. We're doing this intuitively. And the idea is that it models our reasoning, but it's not that we're actually doing the math. And I feel that we can do that in the fine-tuning case, even if we can't give specific probability values. Because I certainly agree you can't give, there's no way to say what the probability is that the gravitational constant was 10 instead of 6.7, right? I agree there's no such thing as that probability. But I disagree with the idea that prevents us from stating the fine-tuning claim that it's extremely improbable that a universe with randomly generated fundamental physical constants would support life. Okay, well, last one, another technical one called the problem of old evidence. And this objection observes that the probability that life exists is 1. This whole model assumes that we're learning that life exists. We have these prior probabilities, like Fred the darts player from the other video, and then we learn. Just like we learn that the dart hit the bullseye, we learn that life exists. But we already knew it. So our probability that life exists, given that God doesn't exist, should be 1. It should be 1 no matter what, because we believe that life exists. Our unicorn rating of the problem of old evidence is, sorry to be repetitive, but 1 unicorn. It's a stretch. And the reason is this is a general problem with the Bayesian model of scientific inference. Scientists regularly make retrodictions, which is a prediction except you already knew the answer. Any solution to the problem of old evidence will allow the fine-tuning reasoning to go through. And if the problem of old evidence can't be solved, then this is not a good model of scientific reasoning, and whatever the correct model of scientific reasoning is should account for retrodictions and thus account for the fine-tuning argument. As I look at these 7 objections and my ratings for them, they're not very good. They're not compelling. We have yet to find a reason to majorly resist the conclusion of the fine-tuning argument. The best one is certainly Hume, and what Meow Meow says is maybe we should bump that up a little bit, because that's probably the most formidable thing we've discovered so far, is getting to that gap between a powerful designer of the universe and something that counts as God or something that's worthy of worship. So we'll kowtow to Hume and the Braveheart Meow Meow, and we'll up them to 3 unicorns.
So muchly.
So the best objection we have going so far, according to my ranking, is Hume's objection. If you disagree or agree, leave your thoughts in the comments. And if you know this literature at all, you know there's one more objection that's potentially devastating to the fine-tuning argument, and that's the multiverse objection. And this relates to anthropic reasoning, and I'm going to discuss it in this video right here. Thanks for watching.